When I first got into playing music, I was desperate to play with anyone. I was a young kid with a drum set who had low standards, which meant that I went down some pretty weird paths. I'm a Cleveland native, so I did play with a couple of Midwest emo and scrams bands, but those would just be generic jam sessions, and we said stuff like how we were going to be the next brave little abacus. A bunch of inventive high schoolers who would change the way that emo was looked at. I think we had one practice session together before we broke up and never spoke to each other again. Also, we sucked. I had no clue how to properly play drums, and the drum work on every brave little abacus piece is insane. Eventually, the only steady gig I got was playing for free in church. I had to do all these contemporary Christian songs, and they just made me so bored. I didn't have anything against Christianity itself or anything like that. I think that worship music can be incredible. People like Washington Phillips.
By and by, I'm going to see the King. By and by, I'm going to see the King.
John Coltrane. And, some dude named Johann Sebastian Bach. Were all amazing, and their work is so inspired and about God that to remove that from their work would to not fully appreciate it. I am still quite open to religion, though I am not practicing anything right now. My main issue with contemporary Christian music is that it's such a lame way to show your love to God. I don't know how many of you who are listening are religious, but get into a certain frame of reference for me, if you will. When you think of a higher power, whether that's Allah or Yahweh or Vishnu or Buddha or the spirit of nature, how do you express your love for them through art? Now, I personally imagine it being something more complex than a 1, 6, 4, 5 chord progression. Okay, that's not even the main issue. My main issue with contemporary Christian music is that it feels so unpassionate, so bland, like the weakest form of expressing this idea of love for God. God is a beautiful thing. He sent down his own born son, who is also himself, to die for your sins and let you get into heaven. It's a beautiful, passionate thing, this relationship between you and God, yet almost all contemporary Christian music that I've heard sounds exactly the same, and I know that's a bit of a curmudgeonly thing to say, and there are differences, but when I was playing drums to these songs, more often than not, I would forget which songs they were because the forms and the structures and the sound were so similar. If you like modern worship music and it gets you closer to God, I don't want to stomp on what you like and are fulfilled by. If it does it for you, that's a good thing. Go, enjoy music. It's one of the best things to enjoy. I only complained so much because I was trying to join the faith and strengthen my connection with God through these songs, but I had to play them every Sunday for 3 months, and by the end of it, I was completely put off by the faith. I felt like everyone was just having the same connection with God, a copy-pasted experience that did not bring inspiration, it brought boredom. I stopped going to that church and stopped even thinking about being a Christian in any sense for a long, long time. What I needed at the time was someone to show me Christian music that was more dynamic, more honest. All this contemporary music was just folding into each other. I could hear no difference between these artists' songs, let alone an album. I needed something shocking, something modern. Of course, Bach and Coltrane and all those people, they were able to really show me what a close connection to God could do artistically, but I needed something that was, not done 50 years or centuries ago. A couple of years later, I joined 4chan and met someone named Giving Bear, who was the person I needed to meet when I was deciding my faith, because Bear introduced me to everything that I wanted. All of this incredible music, all inspired by Christianity that sounded insane compared to the stuff I was playing in church. Bands like The Trees Community and Half-Handed Cloud sounded so much like themselves that it was like getting hit with a wave I did not see coming. It felt like these artists loved Christ and wanted to show it in their own ways, uncompromising to how people treat worship music. The best thing, though, that Bear showed me was Lift to Experience, but they deserve a review of their own.
Sometime, somewhere, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it'll hit you unaware, and you realize sure as hell ain't gonna get any better.
During this time, I also listened to Bear's own album that was released earlier that month. Even Oxen's Array Above the Seraphim Lights. I had no clue what to expect, I just knew it was going to be related to God in some way. And then I heard the first track. This was exactly what I was looking for in terms of expressing faith through personal music. I do not doubt for a second that this is the album that Bear wanted to make. This is how he wanted to express his faith, and after listening and playing drums to so many songs that sounded like a bland reposting of the same ideas, it was so refreshing to hear worship music so different from everything else. If one wanted to fit this album into genres, it's a combination of lo-fi Christian folk and noise, but just saying that these are the genres at play does not do this album justice at all. This is one of the few albums that I would describe as joyous, with happiness and love for Christ exploding from. And by exploding, I mean exploding, because this album is loud, really, really loud. Every song is so happy and energetic, it's like walking outside on an overly bright summer day. It hurts your eyes, but it's gorgeous. There are two main ways of showing this bright joy on this release. The most popular way is through guitar, voice, and sometimes percussion, in the typical folk style. Whenever I listen to these songs, I always get a big smile on my face. Tunes like My, and Your Baileys of Water are just so much fun to make me want to get up and move. I would have loved to have played these when I was still going to church. I can imagine moving my body to this, having some fun, being inspired by the Lord.
All the miles I go, empty as you know me. All the miles I go, empty as you know me. All the miles I go, empty as you know me. All the miles I go, empty as you know me.
I could never imagine dancing in my church before I heard these songs. Ignoring the lo-fi production, these songs would fit any service in my opinion. These lyrics are just as loving of Christ as anything I was playing with a 4-on-the-floor beat.
God the Father who holds me within His eyes. God the Spirit who brings me as His own. God with the sun to set gold. God who has loved me. Jesus, my Lord, falling away wasn't so long. Even if your spirit would stay and sing me a song,
It's inspiring, it's great music. Unlike all the people who were lifelessly saying, "Blessed be the name," I actually believe that Bear loves God and genuinely feels this way towards Christ. It's not all folk music though. The other style is noisy, this kind of tribal industrial sound. This is found on the first track, of course, Our Messiah Flying with the Clouds Towards Heaven, which is a song that melts my face off but is still hauntingly warm. However, the dragon on the shore besides the sea is the real highlight of the noisier tracks. This track is one of the biggest outliers on this release, and one of the biggest outliers I have heard on any album. According to an interview done by Bear and his bandmates with Spirit You All, which is in the description, links to it if you want it, Bear made this song as a musical translation of Revelation 12, in which a dragon chases a woman who has just given birth. To quote, "When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child." The track starts with a 3-against-2 polyrhythm that just repeats itself, creating this calming atmosphere. And then around the 3-minute 30-second mark, the fucking dragon shows up. Heavy noise percussion takes over any instruments we heard before, and these feedbacks scream on top of each other in the chaos. Eventually, these screams join in with the madness. As the song plays out, the dotted rhythm eventually falls back into a 3 against 2, which serves as the mother and child flying away, staying alive through all of this. This track rules. It's quite difficult, and if you don't like noise, it may not be your cup of tea, but if you give it the attention it deserves, it ends up being one of the most rewarding tracks on this album. It then transitions into the final song on this album, which is the self-titled, which is also an outlier. While most of the folk songs on this album have an upbeat and happy atmosphere, Array Above the Seraphim Lights is so emotional. It has this feeling of spontaneity and love that almost all lo-fi folk tracks share. At the start, you can hear rain hitting the top of Bear's truck, and the song itself is just Bear's voice and guitar. Bear says in the interview that I mentioned earlier that Jeff Mangum was a big influence on this release, and if The Dragon on the Shore Besides the Sea is untitled, then Array Above the Seraphim Lights is this album's Two-Headed Boy 2. A song emotionally belted in a pure display of love. It rules. It's one of my favorite folk songs I've ever heard. It carries all the love of all the previous songs on this album, and on top of that, it's then put into this lovely ballad, and it just gives me goosebumps. I love it so much. Sadly, Bear stopped doing even Oxen this year, but the music that has come out is incredible. Some of the most itself and purely passionate music I've ever heard, and the world is better with this music in it. I put the link to the Bandcamp in the description below. Please listen to this music. It changed the way that I view music. Hopefully it does something for you too. Okay, goodbye. Love you.